let's stay with politics, because new rules surrounding donations to political parties here have, I suppose, been stirring public debate in the lead up to the 2023 general election. The reforms would mean that donors pledging over $5,000 would have to be publicly named, and that lowers the threshold. That threshold was previously $15,000. The Justice Minister, Kerry Allen, says the move was a response to public concerns over the transparency of the donations regime and would increase trust in the electoral system. National and ACT have both been critical of the change, suggesting lack of privacy would discourage donations. And if you read between the lines of that intro, it means that Labor, who don't have as many big, rich people supporting them, want to make it more embarrassing for big businesses to donate to their political opponents. Or maybe I'm being just too cynical there. Joining us now, he's on video link and you'll hear him on the audio, is political commentator and columnist Dr Bryce Edwards from the Democracy Project, who have been covering this issue. Bryce, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning to you, Sean. Yeah, I'm pretty good. It's raining. I hope to have made it into the studio today to talk to you, but, geez, it's
pretty awful
nice
out there, isn't it? It really is.
Yeah.
Well, Bryce, look, we are told these changes and these threshold changes to electoral donations and disclosure are because of public concern. It looks more to me, it's like Labor trying to make it more difficult for their political opponents on the right to get anonymous donations or large donations.
Yeah, good point. So, yes, the government are currently trying to reform political finance laws. So this is the rules around the money that the public, wealthy people, businesses, unions, whoever, give to political parties. You know, there's always been rules around these to make it more transparent about who's giving money to politicians. There's always grumbles about these things. There's always ways that these rules don't work and parties get around them. So the government's trying to reform this, but as you say, there's always the case that there's self-interest involved, and so whenever politicians are meddling with these things, you've got to be on the lookout for whether they are doing it in a way that will look after their own interests, maybe increase the money that they get while trying to suppress it for their opponents. And yeah, it is the case at the moment that National seem to be getting a lot more donations than Labor. And it's not always the case, by the way, but it is at the moment that National are very popular with donors. I think it's because wealthy people are seeing, business people are seeing that the tide's turned and we're likely to get a national, well, there's a very good chance of getting a national government next year, so they are backing a winner. Labor arguably could be trying to suppress that money coming in by bringing in very tight donation rules. The main one being that at the moment, if you donate $15,000 or above, you need to declare that, or the party has to declare it to the Electoral Commission, and then they make it public. The government have proposed lowering that down to $5,000. So the threshold is lower, and therefore it will catch a lot more donations, and National are arguing that it will make shy donors much more likely to say no to requests.
And that would be the impact it would have on them. I guess, Bryce, there are good reasons to know who donates to a political party. For example, if a foreign company or a foreign agency were to be backing a political party, we'd want to know about that, wouldn't we?
Yeah, I mean, I think the public have just lost so much faith, so much trust in politicians. They feel that the game is rigged against the public, and that politicians are often making decisions that seem to, they're a bit curious. Why are they doing this, Three Waters reforms, for example? Why are they doing, not putting in a capital gains tax? What's behind it? And the suspicion is that there's money behind it. And it is often the case, as we know, Sean. So, one way of dealing with that is to make it illegal. Disclose it. And, we all know that a lot of donors are actually quite happy to have that declared. You've worked with Top in the past, and Mr. Morgan, I think he was totally fine.
Well, he was donating to himself. That was different, bro.
He was. Well, yeah, but he wasn't He wasn't the leader of the party, and he was the backer.
Yeah.
And likewise, I'm sure if Mr. Morgan was donating again to a different party now, he'd be fine about people knowing that.
Yeah.
And I think that's just what the public expects now. But the politicians, no. So we're seeing a lot of these cash for access schemes being run by the various parties, especially Labor at the moment.
Hang on. Cash for access. Tell us how that works, Bryce.
Oh, it's just simple. It's a fundraising exercise whereby the Prime Minister, other ministers of cabinet will turn up to a function, and to get into this function, you're charged $2,000. Once you're there, you can chat with the Prime Minister or the Minister of Finance, and obviously...
And it's not a political donation. It's a fundraiser.
Well, it's a fundraiser, and look, it's hard to know how parties are dealing with these donations, but I suspect they are calling them transactions. They're not donations.
They're transactions.
It's the ticket to get into a fun night out for business people.
I couldn't think of anything more boring, to be honest.
But they get to push their different ideas to the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance. Yeah. And there's nothing in the rules that the government's proposing at the moment that will stop that.
Okay, because Labor are good at doing that, so they don't want to change those rules, do they? Bryce, the other thing...
Nor will anyone else. By the way, if the Greens, have a chance of changing it, they won't want to change it either, or National, because it's lucrative for them.
Yeah. Bryce, all this happens within the background of a very interesting court case playing out in Auckland. The case involving the New Zealand First Foundation, which is a whole nother ball of wax about fundraising. Doubtless you've been following that.
Yes, so that's in the High Court at the moment. And, of course, just to quickly mention, Labor and National donations are also going to be in the court in, I think, next month or so. So it's all political parties are, having to answer in court at the moment, except in the case of this New Zealand First trial, it's actually about the New Zealand First Foundation, which is a separate vehicle that was set up.
And we must say the accused have name suppression. So we got to...
Oh, yes, yes. But we can say the accused isn't Winston Peters. He's not on trial here, which is very curious because, this is money that's going to New Zealand First from wealthy donors, but it was...
But it wasn't going to New Zealand First. It was going to the New Zealand First Foundation, and it seemed to me, from the evidence presented, that some people in the New Zealand First Party... where it started to ask questions. Well, we're getting these donations, but we don't see the money. We've got this other group of people who are kind of doling the money out to us as they see fit. Yeah.
So this money was actually being spent on New Zealand First, by and large, as far as I can see, and it was being given to New Zealand First, but they are using this legal vehicle to get around the rules so the money wouldn't have to be disclosed to the public. And so that's the big thing, avoided disclosure, and so wealthy people from the racing industry, fishing industry, all sorts of people were giving money to New Zealand First, and the public weren't knowing about it.
Yeah, and let us just say though, Bryce, that wasn't because of the donors taking action, it was because of the people accused in court, right?
Look, this is a good point. That's right. The New Zealand First Foundation had been set up to shift this money in a particular way, and the donors just thought they were giving to New Zealand First. That's right.
All right. Is there anything in the reforms proposed by Kerry Allen that would deal with that issue?
Not particularly. I mean, part of what we did hear from this trial that donors were actually breaking down their donations into smaller amounts to get under that threshold. Remember I was saying before how there's a $15,000 threshold and anything above that has to be disclosed to the public. Some donors, from certain families were giving, say, I can't remember, maybe $50,000 or $100,000, but they were getting different various members of the family to donate, $14,999, each, or something like that. And that was a way of getting around the disclosure rules. Now, with that going down to $5,000, it will be harder to do that, I guess. They'd have to get more people to donate smaller amounts. But I don't know. No, I'm not sure that there's enough dealing with the likes of these foundations. No.
Generally, Bryce, do you think we have, by international standards, robust rules around our political donations and funding?
Well, every country has this problem. Everyone's grappling with the issue of wealth and power, and whether wealth buys it. I mean, it's an open debate to what extent those that give these donations actually achieve what they're trying to do of getting policy or influence. But and lots of different countries have lots of different rules. It's just not uniform. But what's interesting is that the United States is often seen as the country where donors more get their way than anywhere else, and wealth influences, but they actually have the tightest donation rules and the tightest rules about money and politics. It's extremely regulated, and so we're actually heading a bit more towards that. I don't know. So people just think that it's the Wild West in the US. It's quite the opposite. So we're becoming a lot more regulated like the US.
Yeah. All right. Hey, look, while I've got you here, and if you don't mind, Bojo is going. What do you make of that? An inevitability?
It's been a slow car crash happening, hasn't it, Sean? For people like you and I to watch, it's just been delightful. It's a beautiful car crash, and no one's known. I mean, this has just got Brexit has been the big part of all this, and all that manoeuvring that happened in the Conservative Party over Brexit. I mean, this is Johnson kind of paying the price eventually for a lot of those splits in the Conservative Party over whether the UK should pull out of Europe, and the party was quite divided. But I mean, one thing you can say about Johnson is he eventually did get that all, as Prime Minister, he got the Brexit actually done, and he fulfilled
and that I guess will be his legacy.
The public's referendum vote. So yes, that will be his legacy. Yes, he was a bit of a clown, shall we say, as PM. He was dogged by all these lockdown drinking things, but he actually did get the Brexit thing progressed. So I guess that's his one big...
all right. Any ideas? Positive. Do you have any ideas on who's going to replace him and what it means in a broader sense for British politics?
I don't, but I think Johnson's doing the right thing and staying on for a bit longer to allow a slow and proper, leadership contest that can, get this sorted once and for all. Although it's never, sorted once and for all in the Conservative Party, because it just seems that every Conservative leader eventually faces mutiny and eventually is pushed out. So Johnson is really just another in a long line of leaders who have gone in disgrace. Yeah.
Bryce, just back home to the Prime Minister, I think, meeting with Albanese this afternoon, the last act of her globetrotting
World Tour.
Yeah, the World Tour, the Jacinda Ardern World Tour. And she comes back, I guess, I'm getting the feeling, to some uncertainty. Had this been a year ago, we would be in red, no doubt, with the amount of COVID we've got going around. We now, though, have opened the borders, and we are doing what some people said we should have done a year ago. Damn the torpedoes, carry on.
Yeah.
And we have polls clearly slippy. We have a trend of National rising, Labour falling, and as you said earlier, the possibility, now I think probably the probability of a change of government. So the Prime Minister comes home over the weekend. What does she need to do to stop that slide and reverse that fortune? What will they be looking for?
Well, I mean, I'll just briefly mention the COVID situation, which I think is quite serious, and it's going to be very difficult for the government to deal with, because those numbers, infection rates, do seem to be going up, and we've all got kind of COVID malaise. We don't want tighter restrictions, but it might have to happen. There might have to be something to stop that becoming a much worse situation over the winter months. But, I think Ardern really doesn't want to, for lots of reasons, want to increase restrictions, go to red. But what does she have to do? Well, it's not going to be easy, but I think there's a lot of areas of reform that the public are just so unhappy with, and I think you'd probably call them the woke reforms, the ones around Three Waters, the ones around I don't know, lots of
co-governance,
social engineering.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that I think are dogging this government. I mean, there's not much the government can do around the precarious economic situation we're in, but people do expect them to deal with the bread and butter issues, housing, inequality, wages, health, education. That's really where they have to make some progress on, and eventually.
And those are hard things to make progress on, Bryce, in the current circumstance, though, aren't they?
They're the necessary ones. They're the really necessary ones. That's what people actually care about, and they don't care so much about, I don't know, some of these other issues.
Trade deals, free trade deals with Europe and everything. Because you got to say, her trip has not been a failure. It has been a limited success. But I just wonder if we aren't here looking closer to home for things to make us feel good.
Oh, of course. And I don't know, we'll have to see whether the government's going to extend, half-price travel fares or the petrol tax relief, because those things people do care about, and it's people's back pockets, I think, that are going to determine a lot of voting over the next, or voting intentions over the next.
And as for the reforms, Bryce, maybe no one will have more than $5,000 to donate to a political party by the time the next election rolls around.
I don't think that's how it's going, no. I think we are seeing some big increases in wealth at the moment, despite the economic storms. No, it's still happening. I mean, not so much in housing. We're seeing the housing market sort of start to tank. But no, a lot of business is still doing very well at the moment under this Labor government, which is quite interesting.
Hey, Bryce, always lovely to chat, mate. Thank you for joining us, and I know it was a little bit earlier than we had planned. That is Dr Bryce Edwards from the Democracy Project.